Oh, it's the end. My only friend. The end. Hello everyone, and welcome to another installment of Cosmic Sense. I'm Cosmic Keith, and today you're going to get my take on the big 2012. That's right, 2012. Now, before I get into the Mayan calendar, into this time, and into what's supposed to happen, just want to sort of touch a couple issues really briefly, and one of them is consciousness. So what is consciousness? Well, this is obviously a huge question. I won't address that entirely, but the way I want to use that word in this presentation is as follows. Now, currently in our dualistic black and white, left and right reality, we have two very extreme versions of what consciousness is. On one side, you have scientific materialism, which basically says that consciousness, that sense of beingness, you, is an emergent property of the physical body. So just as like you might turn on a motor to power something, and you could put your hands near that motor and feel some heat coming off of it, that heat that comes off of that motor would be considered an emergent property. And just in the same sense, the human body, with all of its cells churning and the mechanism of life creating here in the physical form, the emergent property of that is you. So you are the result. You are the emergent property of the mechanism of the body. Now, the other extreme in consciousness would be that consciousness, this sense, this beingness, this identity, this energy that you are, is an otherworldly, an other dimensional sort of energy that comes into our realm and manifests a physical body. So in that sense, you have consciousness, the energy, this sense that you can experience as being you, coming into the dimensional realm that we exist in and manifesting physical form. And on the other side, you have the physical form in its operation manifesting consciousness. So these are two polar extremes. And so for basically all of Cosmic Sense, and for this presentation particularly, I want you to embrace this version of consciousness, that this sense of beingness that you are has a otherworldly component, that there is an energetic connection, that there is something paradoxically that is you, that yet is beyond this space, that has come into this space and manifests the physical form. The date. Why now? I mean, really? Why now? Is this, some date, some number, some time that, prophets and older cultures just kind of picked and tossed it up into the future to freak us out? Arbitrary, meaningless time? Well, I know cartoonists and comedy writers have had some great fodder there. That's been a lot of fun. However, that doesn't seem to be the case. And what seems to be the case is that these cultures actually meticulously tracked larger cycles of this universe and of this solar system that we are an integral part of. In his book, Galactic Alignment, John Major Jenkins references the work of, really a litany of historical astrologers, astronomers, and cosmologists to present the case that these older cultures, in his book specifically the Mayan, the Egyptian, and the Vedic Hindu, were meticulously tracking not just the yearly rounds of solstices and equinoxes, but were deeply engaged in tracking a much larger cycle. A cycle that they claim has deep impacts on the life on Earth, physical transformation and spiritual transformation of humans. Now we call this cycle the precession of the equinoxes, and it is a cycle that is 26,000 years long. Okay, wow. So what is a precession of the equinoxes? Well, in a classic cosmic broad stroke, I'm just going to, really briefly touch on this. But essentially what it is calculations based on the precession of the Earth and our relative position to the center of the galaxy. Now the Earth revolves on its axis, and there is a wobble to that axis. Now that axis wobble is called precession. And if you let that axis trace its path, trace its cycle, which is an oval, it finishes its cycle every 26,000 years. Now, taking into consideration these slight positional changes of the Earth relative to the stars, the zodiac, these cultures tracked our planet's position relative to the center of the galaxy. Now, as we orbit the sun, so our solar system does as well orbit the center of the galaxy. Now, it's a different kind of orbit in a sense where we aren't actually going all the way around the center of the galaxy. I believe that would take millions of years to do. But what we do is we kind of go close and we come away. We go close and we come away. In his book, John Major Jenkins says, Galileo's revolutionary discovery was that all things do not revolve around the Earth, and that a higher center, the sun, must be recognized. Likewise, my work has sought to break the bubble again, so that we might recognize an even higher center, the galactic center, and integrate it into conventional thought as a fundamental player in the affairs of the Earth. Now, John Major Jenkins goes very deep into these cultures and a variety of other cultures' views on this, including the Vedic Yugas, which are old Hindu texts passed down for thousands of years from a god-man named Manu. These yugas, or ages, I'm going to explore that referencing a different book, a book called The Flower of Life by Drunvalo Melchizedek. Drunvalo points out that the Vedic yugas, which are ages, have two phases in this cycle. There is the ascending phase, that is, as we move towards the center of the galaxy, we ascend or awaken. And then there is a descending phase, where as we move away from the galaxy, we descend and fall asleep. Now, Drunvalo points out that as we move into the awakening phase, we become more aware of our direct connection to the source of all life. And that as we descend and move away from it, we begin to forget that. We begin to move more into matter, into the dense material realm. Would it surprise you to know that we are coming out of the densest, the darkest, most disconnected from source phase of these yugas and are moving into a new golden age? Drunvalo states, according to the ancient writings, when we reach the upper small oval at C, moving away from the center of the galaxy, we begin to fall asleep and keep losing consciousness, falling through dimensional levels until we come to the place at the lower small oval, when we start to wake up and begin to move up through the dimensional levels. A similar cycle occurs on Earth every day. If you look at the Earth from space, it is half dark and half light at any moment, and the people on the dark half are pretty much asleep, and the people on the light half are pretty much awake. This precession of the equinoxes is just the same, only it's a much longer cycle. Drunvalo goes on to point out that not only that these cycles exist, but that reminds us and suggests that we look to the wisdom and to the elders of the Aboriginal cultures of the earth today to gain their wisdom on what to do during these times, because they have an ancestral memory of the last time these shifts occurred. So, is this possible that some, Kogi shaman living under a thatched roof on a dirt floor, chewing coca leaves, is more aware about what is going on in the universe and what is going on the earth than you, than a, respected and accredited academic, or even, dare I say, a Hollywood film executive? I mean, I sometimes see my culture as a charming bunch of modern primitives, completely disconnected from any larger cycles that we're a part of. The Mayan calendar. 2012. Do I put it up there, the equal sign? The end of the world? Right? I mean, that's what we're being told. That's like the idea that is being passed down in my society. Is that the case? Well, my investigations into the Mayan calendar began in the early 90s, and I read a variety of books on that civilization. And the author that really stuck out at that point was Jose Arguelles, someone with Maya ancestry, an American author who had done extensive research into Mayan civilization. And what Jose points out and reminds us is that the Mayan civilization had many calendars. They had the Tolkien, they had the Hob, they had the Venus cycle, the Venus round, the long count. They had a variety of calendars. Jose points out that there is a calendar called the long count, and that this calendar, which begins at 13,0000, 3113 BC, on our calendar, will end at 2012 in our calendar. So what kind of characteristics are we to expect at the end of this cycle? I mean, we are in what is called the last Ketun of the last Baktun of this entire long count. We are there. We are at the end. What is the end? Fire, brimstone, trouble, explosion, death? Well, what do you think? According to Jose, the closing of the cycle is marked by a festive climate, a synchronization of mythic forms, and a tone of spiritual regeneration hitherto unknown in the historical phase. Signaled as the Mayan return, this provides the final touch as the planet attains conscious articulation of its light body, thus entering its next evolutionary stage and assuring that galactic community receives a new member. Now, with respect to the Mayan calendar or calendars, I want to focus now on the work of Dr. Carl Johann Kalaman, whose work focuses on interpreting a calendar discovered on a stelae in Coba, Mexico. And this calendar, which traces several different creation cycles, is a calendar that does not simply track duration of motion, but tracks the evolution of consciousness. Now, this calendar essentially traces the evolution of consciousness from 16.4 billion years ago all the way up this pyramid to this time in 2011, which is called conscious co-creation, when we reach that point. Now, the pyramid has 9 levels called underworlds. Dig that, Carl Jung. Each underworld is divided into 13 units, 7 days and 6 nights. Again, sound familiar? Each of those day-night units, or heavens, are governed by a different Mayan god, which in turn will affect consciousness in a specific way relative to that particular underworld. Now, each level of the pyramid is 20 times shorter than the one previous to it. For example, in the first underworld, the cellular underworld, one of the heavens, or one day or night, was 1.26 billion years long. Now, in the next level above it, the mammalian underworld, each day or night is a mere 63.1 million years long. So the levels are named. As you can see, there's the cellular, mammalian, familial, tribal, cultural, national, planetary, galactic, and the final level of consciousness, the universal. So consciousness is accelerating. Now, I enjoy philosophically what this calendar presents. It's a real intriguing model of consciousness. But what really took it over the edge for me, and what really sort of made my hair stand up, is when you take that calendar and you take the accepted Western scientific dates that we have for a variety of different events, and you slot it onto that calendar. Wow, this is pretty extraordinary. And I mean, really, ultimately, one of the most intriguing aspects of this is the idea that this calendar actually begins 16.4 billion years ago, which is what? Right around the time that our scientists believe the Big Bang occurred. Another way to understand this calendar is imagine human society, and I hate to use this as an example, but I feel like I don't have much others, and look at it with respect to warfare. So you essentially have consciousness evolving up through these levels. And so if you look at human history relevant to them, you'll see that we were engaged first in tribal war, and in race war, that moved up into religious warfare in the next level, where you could be maybe of a few different tribes but ascribe to the same religion, and those religions would battle, that on the cultural level. And then you moved up from the cultural into the national level, where you have different races and different religions standing side by side and fighting with each other, other nations. Now, people don't bat an eye about that right now, but I'll tell you, many, many cycles ago, you would not see different races fighting together. You would not see different religions fighting together. Another analogy I like to use with respect to this model of consciousness is the idea of surfing. You can drop in on a wave and you can ride right down the front of it, right out of it, and then the wave crashes on your head. Or you can just sit on your surfboard out there and you can just let all the waves go. You can just not catch anything. Or you can drop in and you can ride. You can find that pocket, that present that we live in, and you can surf that wave. And that's what I am trying to do right now, is to ride that pocket. Consciousness is a dynamic experience. I think we really forget and become entranced with the singular experience that we have in our identities. I think when we look at these calendars from the past, we are hit with the idea that there is a larger cycle and there are larger seasons and a larger aspect to all kinds of things that we experience in life. So again, let's get into this. What is it? What is happening?
It's the apocalypse, end of days, the judgment day, the end of the world, my friend.
In ancient times, the Mayan people were the first civilization to discover that this planet had an expiration date. According to their calendar, in the year 2012, a cataclysmic event will unfold caused by an alignment of the planets in our solar system that only happens every 640,000 years. People will get it all. The forces of Mother Nature will be so devastating, it will bring an end to this world on winter solstice 12/21/12.
The film 2012 is like a lot of programs that are coming out right now, which, in my opinion, are clearly misrepresenting the Mayan culture and the Mayan calendars. Simply using the 2012 date to drum up more fear about what's going on right now. But what is going on right now? I mean, even Western science is seeing change. The magnetic poles are on the move, and the magnetic field of the Earth is actually losing strength. It's weakening. Are these precursors to another pole shift that will bring on Earth changes? I mean, really, what is happening? What is going on here? Now, another thing that occurred that was pretty big in my research of Mayan culture happened pretty recently. Now there's 440 Mayan tribes in Mexico and in Central America, and they all, have an elected leader or an elder. And apparently for the first time in a long, long time, these leaders all came together and elected a single Mayan leader. So this elected elder, grandfather Don Alejandro Cerrillo, has been recognized as an ambassador by the president of Guatemala. And so finally, in this day and age of hearing all these different ideas about what's going on with the Mayan calendar and what the story of the Mayan civilization is, we have a living Mayan elder.
Mucha gente se aprovecha del calendario maya, asustando a nuestra gente con una palabra amenaza, donde dice que ya va a terminar el mundo. Ya el año 2012 se va a terminar el mundo. Entonces, de ese sentido que les digo a todos mis hermanos, no tengan miedo. El sol se va a oscurecer, la planeta Tierra, no vemos el sol. Debemos de entender, es como el año nuevo. Terminó el año nuevo hoy, 31 de diciembre, mañana 1 de enero. Feliz año nuevo. Así hagamos que llegue ese día. Ese día no tenemos fecha de decir que sea el 12 de diciembre, 2015, 2020 o 2000 más allá. Estamos perdidos de la fecha correcta. Los mayas, durante las noches de oscuridad, nunca se pierden su fuego. Es la antorcha que ilumina la gran noche hasta esperar que venga nuevo sol.
What we're looking at now is a really dynamic time. This extraordinary transition, though large in scale and essentially unstoppable, is largely being fashioned by us, by our thoughts. How do we see the end? I mean, we are so inundated with the word the end. No one has ever thought about the fact that the end is the same thing as the beginning. What is going to begin now? But we can't focus on that. We have been, in my culture, so focused. We have been led to focus our energy on the end. And so we are, in the same sense, consciously participating in manifesting what this transition is going to look like. So if we want to call this the end of the world, the end times, I'm with it. Let's do that, all right? So let's look at this world, okay? This world of unmitigated warfare, unbelievable economic injustice, poverty, disease, starvation, pollution, destructive energy systems. That world will end. And getting back to that Mayan calendar and to Dr. Kalaman's work, one of the 13 Mayan gods that ruled over each underworld was called the god of death. But this is not the god of death as we know death. This is the death of consciousness. So at this particular point in the Mayan calendar, the death of consciousness is occurring. And what that means is dying to your old self. That means that something is going to be happening to you, and maybe is happening to you or has happened to you right now, that has changed you forever. You can't go back to the other you. You can't go back to that other consciousness. That consciousness is dead. It is time for you to move into the new consciousness. And what does that look like? Well, we're all in this together. And all I have to say to you is that I am very optimistic about these times. And I want to have you really know that how you think and how you feel and who you are is extraordinarily relevant also to everything in the universe. So ultimately, it would seem to me that we have inherited a pretty limited perspective on reality, a limited perspective on ancient cultures, on calendars, on time. and also a very limited perspective on our place within larger processes and larger cycles of the universe. So just as that caterpillar creates that hardened shell around it and dies to its caterpillar self, emerging as a beautiful butterfly, so too are we involved right now in a similar transformative event. We all are in our hardened chrysalises right now, and we are all dying to our old selves. It's time. It's time. Break that chrysalis wide open. Break that hardened, fear-based, limited perspective wide open and emerge. Emerge as the true, transformed you. Spread those wings and fly.
Death of old consciousness. Open your fist and listen to this. What we knew before is out the door. Death of old consciousness. Exit the abyss, for the truth exists. The brain I once adored is in discord. Death of old consciousness. I promise you this, it won't be missed. What you were before, you are no more.